November 8, 1954, 6:23 a.m. Bumpy Johnson stood over the body of Vincent Knuckles Morty in a basement on 142nd Street. Blood was still pooling on the concrete floor. Knuckles had been the Genovese family's top enforcer in Harlem, the man they sent when negotiations failed and violence was the only language left. He'd killed 17 men in his career. Now he was number 18 on his own list. 4 more bodies would drop before midnight. The Genovese family had made a move they thought was smart. They'd sent 5 of their best soldiers into Harlem to take over 3 of Bumpy's policy banks by force. Walk in, guns out, take control, send a message. They thought Bumpy Johnson, at 47 years old, had gotten soft. They thought the king of Harlem had lost his edge. They thought wrong. Bumpy looked at his watch, then at Illinois Gordon, his most trusted lieutenant. How long until the families hear about this? Maybe an hour, Illinois replied. Maybe less. Bumpy nodded slowly. Good, I want them to hear. I want every mobster from here to Chicago to know what happened today. I want them to understand something they keep forgetting. He paused, looking down at Knuckles one last time. Harlem isn't territory you take, it's territory you die in. What nobody knew, what the Genovese family would learn in the most brutal way possible, was that Bumpy Johnson had been waiting for them. He'd known about the hit for 2 weeks, and the trap he'd set would send a message so powerful that the Italian mob would leave Harlem alone for the next decade. To understand what happened in those 24 hours, you need to understand the situation in Harlem in November 1954. By the mid-50s, Bumpy Johnson had been ruling Harlem for nearly 15 years. His numbers operations generated $4 million annually. His protection rackets covered 300 businesses. His influence reached City Hall, police precincts, and legitimate business interests across Manhattan. He was untouchable, or so everyone thought. But the Italian mob, specifically the Genovese crime family, saw something else. They saw an aging gangster who'd survived on reputation more than action. They saw a black operator who'd been lucky, not skilled. They saw an opportunity. Vito Genovese himself had given the order. Take 3 policy banks. Show Bumpy we're serious. If he fights, crush him. If he negotiates, we take 50% of everything. Either way, we're getting what we want. The policy banks were the heart of Bumpy's operation. 3 locations in central Harlem where bets were collected, money was counted, and payouts were distributed. Taking them would cripple Bumpy's infrastructure and force him to surrender or start a war he couldn't win. At least, that's what Vito Genovese believed. The 5 soldiers Genovese sent were the best he had. Vincent Knuckles Morty, the enforcer who'd killed 17 men without hesitation. Anthony Two Guns Pellegrino, an expert shooter who carried matching .45s and never missed. Joey the Hammer Romano, a muscle-bound killer who'd beaten 3 men to death with his bare hands. Frank Cisco Costanza, a strategist who planned jobs with military precision. And Tommy the Rat Baron, an inside man who'd been working undercover in Harlem for 6 months, learning routines, mapping locations, identifying weaknesses. October 28, 1954, 11 days before the hit. Tommy the Rat Baron sat in a back booth at Big Joe's Diner on 135th Street, eating breakfast and watching. For 6 months, he'd been playing the role of a recently released convict looking for work. He'd made friends, earned trust, gotten close to some of Bumpy's mid-level operators. Nobody suspected. Tommy had mapped out all 3 policy banks. The 138th Street location opened at 6 a.m., run by an old man named Marcus Webb with 2 guards, vulnerable. The Lenox Avenue location opened at 7 a.m., heavier security, 4 guards, but predictable schedules, manageable. The 125th Street location was the fortress. 8 guards, rotating shifts, security protocols that changed weekly. Too hard. Tommy's plan was simple. Hit 138th Street first at 6:15 a.m. when Marcus Webb unlocked the doors and the guards were still settling in. Grab the money, take control, leave 2 men to hold it. Hit Lenox Avenue second at 7:30 a.m., same strategy. Leave 2 men. By 9 a.m., Genovese would control 2 of Bumpy's 3 main banks, and Bumpy would have to negotiate. That's what Tommy the Rat Baron thought was going to happen. What Tommy didn't know was that Illinois Gordon had made him 3 months earlier. Illinois had decades of experience reading people. He could spot an infiltrator the way a doctor spots symptoms, the way Tommy asked questions, the way his eyes measured distances, the way he paid attention to things regular hustlers didn't care about. Illinois had reported his suspicions to Bumpy in August. Bumpy had made a decision that defined everything that followed. Let him keep looking. Let him think he's fooling us, feed him information, make him confident, and when he makes his move, we'll be ready. For 3 months, Bumpy Johnson had been running a counterintelligence operation. He'd let Tommy see the policy bank routines, but he'd altered them slightly, made security look weaker than it was, made schedules look predictable when they weren't. made the whole operation look like something 5 good soldiers could take. Meanwhile, Bumpy had been preparing something else. He'd identified Tommy's contacts, he'd tracked his movements. He'd figured out exactly when the Genovese family would make their move, and he'd turned the policy banks into traps. On November 7th, the day before the hit, Tommy the Rat sent word to Vincent Knuckles Morty. "Tomorrow morning, 6:15 a.m., everything's ready." Knuckles assembled the team that night at a safe house in the Bronx. 5 men, 12 guns, 2 cars. The plan was clean, simple, professional. "We hit fast, we hit hard, we take control," Knuckles said, laying out the strategy. "Tommy says the guards are old, slow, not expecting trouble. We walk in, guns out, they'll fold. By noon, Harlem belongs to the family." Anthony 2 guns, Pellegrino cleaned his matching .45s. "And if Bumpy tries something, then Bumpy dies," Knuckles replied. "Genovese gave us authority. If Johnson pushes back, we put him down." What none of them knew was that while they were planning in the Bronx, Bumpy Johnson was 3 moves ahead in Harlem. He'd positioned 20 of his best men at strategic locations around both policy banks. He'd armed them with shotguns, not pistols. Close range, devastating. He'd coordinated with 3 NYPD officers he'd been paying for years, men who would look the other way when the shooting started. And most importantly, he decided that this wouldn't be a negotiation. This would be a massacre. November 8, 1954, 6:14 a.m. Vincent Knuckles, Morty, and Joey the Hammer Romano pulled up outside the 138th Street Policy Bank in a black Chrysler. The street was quiet, early morning, nobody around, perfect. They walked to the door. Marcus Webb was inside, visible through the window, counting money at the front desk. 2 guards stood nearby, looking bored. Knuckles smiled. This was going to be easy. He pushed open the door. "Nobody moves, nobody dies, we're taking over." That's when the walls exploded, not literally, but it felt that way. 6 men materialized from positions Knuckles hadn't seen, behind counters in back rooms in the shadows, all of them holding shotguns, all of them aimed at Knuckles and Joey. Marcus Webb, the old man who was supposed to be an easy target, pulled a .357 Magnum from under his desk. "You boys lost?" Marcus asked calmly. Knuckles froze. His hand was on his .38, but 6 shotguns beat 1 pistol. The math was fatal. "This is a mistake," Knuckles said, trying to salvage the situation. "We're with the Genovese family. You know what that means. You know what happens if you touch us." "I know exactly what happens," came a voice from the back room. Bumpy Johnson stepped into view. He was wearing an immaculate gray suit, no weapon visible, hands in his pockets. Calm. "Too calm. You die, then your friends die. Then I send your bodies back to Vito Genovese with a message he'll never forget." Knuckles' confidence cracked. "Bumpy, we can talk about this. This doesn't have to go bad." "You're right," Bumpy said quietly. "It doesn't have to go bad. It's already bad. You walked into my operation with guns, thinking you could take what I've built, thinking I'd negotiate, thinking I'd surrender. You thought wrong." Knuckles made his move. His hand went for his .38. He was fast. He'd always been fast. But shotguns don't require precision. The first blast caught Knuckles in the chest, lifting him off his feet and slamming him into the wall. Joey, the Hammer, tried to run. 3 shotgun blasts hit him before he reached the door. His body collapsed in the doorway, blocking the exit. The entire sequence took 4 seconds. 2 of the Genovese family's best soldiers were dead before they understood they'd walked into a trap. Bumpy stepped over Knuckles' body and looked out the window. Anthony 2 guns, Pellegrino and Francisco Costanza were parked half a block away in the second car, waiting for the signal that the bank was secure. They'd heard the shots. They were reaching for their weapons. "Illinois," Bumpy said calmly. "Handle it." Illinois Gordon and 4 men walked out of the policy bank with shotguns visible. They didn't run. They didn't hide. They walked straight toward the second car, weapons raised. 2 guns made the smart play. He floored the accelerator, tires screaming, racing away from 138th Street toward Lenox Avenue where Tommy, the Rat, was waiting at the second policy bank. He had to warn Tommy. He had to tell the family. This wasn't a takeover. This was a slaughter. 6:47 a.m. Anthony 2 guns, Pellegrino and Francisco Costanza skidded to a stop outside the Lenox Avenue policy bank. 2 guns was breathing hard, his confidence shattered. Knuckles was dead. Joey was dead. The plan was destroyed. "We need to get Tommy and get out," Cisco said, his strategic mind trying to salvage the situation. "We tell Genovese what happened. We regroup. We come back with 50 men. They ran to the policy bank door. Tommy, the Rat, was inside, confused, wondering why the 138th Street team hadn't called with an all-clear signal. "We're blown," 2 guns said, grabbing Tommy's arm. "It was a trap. Knuckles is dead. Joey's dead. We need to move now." Tommy went pale. 6 months of undercover work, months of building trust, all for nothing. How did they know? "I don't know, but they knew everything. We need to." The door burst open. Illinois Gordon walked in first, shotgun leveled. Behind him, 8 more men with weapons drawn. The Lenox Avenue policy bank, like 138th Street, had been a trap. Going somewhere? Illinois asked. Two Guns lived up to his nickname. His hands went to both .45 simultaneously. He was the fastest draw in the Genovese family. He'd won gunfights against impossible odds, but speed doesn't matter when you're already surrounded. He got one shot off. It went wide, hit the ceiling. 9 weapons fired in response. Anthony Two Guns Pellegrino died before his body hit the ground. Frank Cisco Costanza, the strategist who planned everything perfectly, tried to think his way out. Wait, I can pay. I can. Illinois pulled the trigger. Cisco's words died with him. Tommy the Rat Baron dropped to his knees, hands up. Please, please, I'll leave. I'll never come back. I'll tell Genovese to leave Harlem alone. Just let me live. Bumpy Johnson walked in through the back entrance. He looked at Tommy for a long moment. You've been in my neighborhood for 6 months, eating in my restaurants, drinking in my bars, pretending to be one of us, learning our routines, planning to destroy what we've built. He paused. You know what the penalty for betrayal is in Harlem? Tommy was crying now. Please, Mr. Johnson, please. The penalty, Bumpy continued, his voice never rising above conversational volume, is the same for everyone. It doesn't matter if you're Italian, black, white, rich, or poor. You betray this community, you die in this community. Bumpy nodded to Illinois. Tommy the Rat Baron became the 5th body before 8 a.m. Bumpy stood in the middle of the Lenox Avenue Policy Bank, surrounded by his men, looking at the 3 bodies on the floor. 5 Genovese soldiers, 5 of their best, all dead in less than 2 hours. Clean this up, Bumpy said quietly. Then deliver the bodies to Genovese, all 5 of them, with a message. What message? Illinois asked. Bumpy's expression was ice cold. Tell him these are the men who tried to take Harlem. Tell him if he sends more, he'll get them back the same way. Tell him Harlem isn't negotiable, it isn't for sale, and it will never belong to anyone who doesn't respect it. By 10 a.m., word was spreading through New York's underworld like wildfire. The Genovese family had sent 5 soldiers to take over Bumpy Johnson's operations. All 5 were dead, not wounded, not captured, dead, delivered back to the family in body bags with a message that couldn't be misunderstood. Vito Genovese received the bodies at his social club in Greenwich Village. He stared at the 5 men he'd sent into Harlem, men he'd trusted, men he'd considered untouchable, all of them butchered. Carlo Gambino, head of another New York family, was there when the bodies arrived. He looked at Vito and said something that would define mob policy toward Harlem for the next decade. Leave it alone. Bumpy Johnson just told you in the clearest language possible that Harlem costs more than it's worth. You send 50 men, he'll kill 50 men. You send 100, he'll kill 100. That neighborhood protects him because he protects that neighborhood. You can't break that with force. Vito Genovese was furious. He wanted revenge. He wanted to send an army into Harlem and burn it to the ground. But he was also a businessman, and the business math was clear. Taking Harlem from Bumpy Johnson would cost millions of dollars, dozens of soldiers, and years of warfare. And even if he won, he'd control a neighborhood that hated him, where every resident was a potential enemy, where making money would be harder than the money was worth. Vito made the call. We stay out of Harlem, no operations, no soldiers, no nothing. Bumpy Johnson can have it. It's not worth the blood. The other families agreed. Within a week, the word was official. Harlem was off limits. Bumpy Johnson had drawn a line in blood, and the 5 families respected it. Story of those 24 hours became legend in New York's criminal underworld. 5 mob soldiers, all experienced killers, all backed by the most powerful crime family in the city, walked into Harlem thinking they'd take over. None of them walked out. Bumpy Johnson had known they were coming. He'd prepared for weeks. And when they made their move, he destroyed them so completely that the mob backed down without firing another shot. That's real power, not the power to start wars, the power to end them. Not the power to threaten violence, the power to deliver it so decisively that threats become unnecessary. Bumpy didn't negotiate with the Genovese family. He didn't compromise. He didn't show mercy. He showed them exactly what would happen to anyone who tried to take Harlem by force. 5 bodies, 1 message, total victory. For the next 10 years, the Italian mob left Harlem completely alone. No operations, no interference, no attempts to muscle in. Because Vito Genovese, Carlo Gambino, and every other mob boss understood something fundamental. You can't take territory from someone who owns it completely, not just legally, not just financially, but in the hearts and minds of every person who lives there. Bumpy Johnson didn't just control Harlem, he was Harlem, and you can't kill an idea with guns. You can only respect it or die trying to destroy it. The Genovese family chose respect. The real lesson from November 8, 1954 isn't about violence or gangsters, it's about commitment. When you draw a line, you have to be willing to defend it absolutely. Half measures don't work, warnings don't work, negotiations don't work when someone thinks you're weak. Bumpy Johnson could have negotiated with the Genovese family. He could have given them a percentage. He could have avoided the bloodshed. but negotiating from a position of defense sends a message. You can be pushed. Bumpy sent a different message. Push me and die. Not might die. Not could die. Will die, guaranteed. That certainty, that absolute commitment to defending what was his, earned him a decade of peace. Because the mob understood that taking Harlem would cost more than Harlem was worth. Power isn't about how many men you can kill. It's about making others understand you'll kill as many as necessary to protect what matters. If this story got you fired up, hit that subscribe button right now. Drop a like if you understand that sometimes the only way to keep the peace is to prove you're ready for war. And let me know in the comments, did Bumpy make the right call, or should he have tried negotiating first? Next time, we're telling the story of how Bumpy Johnson faced off against Malcolm X in 1963, two titans with completely different visions for Harlem's future. You absolutely don't want to miss that one.